You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and thanks again for coming back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. It's only been a few hours since the last show, and I really want to get back on track. You know, I gave you my reasons for wanting to do this, and putting out 2 shows on the same day seems to me to, I don't know, say we're just going to carry on with life and just get on with it, and hopefully bring you something you like to listen to. I really hope you don't mind. Now, these last 4 days, I'm afraid, have been days of hiking backwards, forwards, with and without our full packs, and one very complicated plan, which I'm going to try to explain to you. I hope you're able to follow along. But first, let's hear from the show's sponsor, Sawyer.
When I hit the trail in 2014, I soon discovered that I come with the wrong water filter. Everybody else had a Sawyer squeeze. Eventually, I bought a squeeze and I loved it. I'm going again this year, and top of my list of things to buy was the new micro squeeze filter by Sawyer. Like all Sawyer stuff, it just works. You can filter up to 100,000 gallons, and their full-size squeeze filter comes with a lifetime warranty. Last year, believe it or not, more than 4 million people got clean water through a Sawyer water filter. But if you think that Sawyer is just about water filters, you could not be more wrong. Nope, they supply everything to protect you, both in the backcountry and the backyard. Protect your gear and clothes as I did with their permethrin fabric treatment, which is 100% odorless after drying. With all the ticks and bugs around, this is an absolute must. They also provide sunscreens and first aid products. Find out more by visiting Sawyer.com.
There are no interviews this week. I'm just going to tell you the 4 days of stories, and hopefully we'll start getting back on track with those interviews this next week. I think you can understand that this has been a more difficult week than we've had on the trail, and so let's just hear about what happened on day number 74. Day 74, Dripping Rock Parking Area, mile 849.4, southbound to Virginia 56, mile 833.8, a 15.6 mile day. Now somehow I'm going to have to explain the plan. We had 4 days, and we knew that we had to do 36 miles to get to the bottom of Priest Mountain. And there didn't seem to be any convenient way for Cushy to come and get us. If you remember, Cushy's injured herself. She's hurt her shin splints. She's actually going to start hiking again tomorrow on Wednesday, but she's hurt her shin splints, and she was going to slack pack us and move us around over the next few days. But we knew we wouldn't have her to pick us up on Saturday evening, so I tried to come up with a plan that made a bit of sense. She wasn't desperately keen on doing forest roads either, so we knew that 36 miles from to get to the bottom of Priest Mountain, we just couldn't get off. So we knew we were going to have to take our full kit with us for those miles. So that was going to, and I thought it was probably best to do that because of her visit to the physical therapist. Probably best to do that over the weekend, because we then needed to do it overnight, and Saturday and Sunday, and of course Saturday and Sunday it was going to pour with rain. So we knew that was going to be quite a tricky time. So looking at the profile, I chose for this particular day, day 74, a southbound hike to get us to the Ty River, which meant meeting where we'd be coming down from the Priest a few days later. And it's when you go down the Priest, it's a long drag down, and then there's a big climb out of that up 3 ridges. Well, we were going to get rid of the climb up it by going down it by going southbound. Then on the Monday, we'd continue onto Rockfish Gap to get us to Shenandoah. I don't know whether that really makes sense, but hopefully, as I tell you what happened, and as I say to you, this one was from Dripping Rock Parking Area 849 to the Ty River 833. So it is a 15.6 mile days, but we are going backwards. And so we knew where we had to get on. So I put the GPS in the car and we got to what looked like the parking area. And when I looked at the Appalachian Trail, we weren't actually on the Appalachian Trail. We were literally 150 yards from that Dripping Rock parking area. But there was a forest, a small forest with houses in between us and where we should have been. And believe it or not, it would have taken 21 minutes by car to get there. So, because she said, well, why not just bushwhack your way through it? You know, you're bound to hit the trail at some stage. So that's exactly what we did. So we started pushing our way through, and very soon, actually, we did pick up a trail, and which then joined the Appalachian Trail. So we were within probably 2 or 3 minutes, we were able to come out at the right place to start. Remember, we were then going southbound, so we got going and really got to Reed's Gap pretty quickly as it was all downhill. I must confess, I'd chosen a pretty good profile for us to do this. Ugg went off ahead, and he's had some troubles with his pack recently, but he seemed to have done some work on his pack and got a lighter one, or got a lighter load anyway, and was doing pretty well. And we didn't see him again till we actually finished. Trigger and I decided to lunch together at Maupin Field Shelter, Maupin, I'm not terribly sure how you pronounce that, before we knew we had this 1,200-foot climb up, and that was going to be the big climb of the day. And at this shelter, we met this incredibly well-honed athlete. He must have been in training for something. He had muscles where I didn't know muscles actually existed, and he was an amazing physical specimen, I'll tell you. He may have been he may very well have been a pro footballer, or I don't know what he was, but man, he was solid, he really was. And then, so anyway, we had our lunch and we headed off uphill. I say it was the only climb we gave ourselves that day, the only big climb, because then we had a climb down of 3,000 feet. And there were some great rocks, and frankly, I'm glad we did it that way. It would have been hard to go up it, but it was one heck of a long way down. But we got down there fine, and Cushy met us. It was great. We went back to the what's it called? Devil's Backbone Brewery, which we loved, by the way. That is a great place to be. And my buddy Bruce Matson, I was just getting my stuff out the car from Cushy's car, and nobody else was around, turned up, and we had a hug, and we were all going to meet for dinner. Bruce set up his tent in Devil's Backbone. I don't know what I've described it in the previous one, but it's a great setup. There's breakfast there, there's dinner there, people come in and use the bars there, and at the back, only 2 or 3 minute walk from the main area, is a little woods where we can hang hammocks and put our tents, and which is what we did. Bruce came out and hung his tent as well. And it was just it's a great place to be. We'd actually left our tents from the previous day because we'd been there the previous night as well. And that night, Bruce came to dinner with us, and he really didn't have to do this. There was me, Cushy, Ugg, Trigger, Tuana, Denali, and a bunch of others. I can't recall everybody, to be honest with you. And he paid for the whole dinner, which was so darn nice of him. Really, really nice. And I don't know whether Bruce had perhaps an extra drink, because he decided instead of just interviewing me for the show, which was what the original plan was, he was then going to hike with us on the Monday in our hike into Rockfish Gap. He decided to hike with us that weekend. So, and I thought to myself at the time, he hasn't hiked a long hike since he finished his through hike last year, sometime in early September. He's going to come out for 36 miles in 2 days. I thought it was going to be tough for him. It certainly turned out to be. But it was a great evening, and he was great company. So that's the end of day number 74. Day 75, Punch Bowl Overlook, mile 797.6 to Hog Camp Gap, mile 814.8, a 17.2 mile day. It was going to be a wet weekend, and we knew it was going to be. And Bruce said, let's get this interview done. So at 6:30, he and I were sitting in his car, and he interviewed me for the show. And that was obviously the episode that I put out earlier on today. Hopefully you like that. We were all ready for breakfast, so at 7 o'clock we all sat down and had this great hiker breakfast they provide for $5, the biggest bargain of all, including fruit, eggs, meat. Oh, it's terrific. Really enjoyed it. And that's once again at the Devil's Backbone. You really should go there. It's a great place. Cushy drove us an hour to our start point. She's been so game and in keeping involved with the trail, keeping involved with our team, and I really admire the way she's kept her spirits up, and she hasn't let this get her down. We knew she was going to get her leg looked at later on in the day, so obviously we wished her well, but she drove us an hour to get to our start point. And really, it was a very easy start. We knew that our climb was going to be at the end of the day. We were also expecting rain around noon. Well, it started right on time. Oh dear. And it started coming down. And I don't know how to cope with rain, as I said. I've now actually bought an umbrella. Or I didn't have it with me at the time, but it still hadn't arrived. But yeah, I've now got an umbrella, and that really is hopefully going to help going forward. But it started right on time. So I didn't even bother my jacket. I let myself get soaked. Because when you're moving, it's okay. It's fine. There were a few light ups and downs, and before we headed down on a really well compacted path. And in fact, the path these 4 days has been really well looked after. And the forest, though, has really, really greened up. Now, this weekend of rain also, with sun due later in the week, will make it even greener. But the difference between now and 10, 12 days is just extraordinary. Bruce actually, just trying to see what this says. Yes, Bruce actually coped very, very well, and we got to Brown Mountain Creek Shelter, which was 9.1 miles in less than 4 hours. So we were really moving quite well. And we got inside to dry out. I actually took my shirt off, dried myself down with my towel, and just kept my towel around my shoulders and didn't even put anything else on. And inside there were a couple of guys we didn't know, but 2 guys we did know. Fancy Pants, who was a big friend of ours, and we really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed his company, and a guy called Free. And Fancy Pants he just had 2 miles to go before he was getting off the trail. He's going to be a great loss to the trail because he's a lot of fun. But they all headed off, so I said goodbye to Fancy Pants and the other guys. And a couple of miles, there was just another couple of miles to the road, which was US Route 60, and there was trail magic set up under a tent. A guy called Brian and his wife Cindy had set themselves up, and before we went up on the next climb, and the rain started pouring. We were undercover. The rain was absolutely at its worst at that point. And they served us hot vegetable soup, which could not have been more welcome. And it just warms your bones, and I had a sandwich as well. It was a great place to stop. When the rain started to ease off a little bit, we started to climb, and Bruce soon started to feel it. So I said to the other guys, you go on, I'll hang out with Bruce. We carried on. We climbed over 3,000 feet in about 5 miles. And Bruce was struggling by now. He got tired. But he, to be fair to him, we were expecting at 2 miles an hour to get to camp about 7 o'clock. And we got there soon after 7 o'clock. So it really wasn't that bad. We came across a foggy ball at the top before descending down into Hog Camp Gap, and where we were going to tent in a field. There was no shelter, so the rain provided us about 15-20 minutes of respite before it started hammering down again. In that time, we were able to get our tents up in a field, and I could hear Bruce in the next shelter. He said, "Oh, it's great. I'm lying down and I'm warming up." And seconds later, I could hear he was asleep. He'd fallen asleep straight away. But then it rained quite a lot in the night, and I think his tiredness took over him. And I think he must have had a decent night, because it had been a tough day. When I think back to how it was when I started. Bruce was suffering from many of those things, stopping quite regularly to gasp for breath and so on. It wasn't the case that I thought he wasn't strong, because he's clearly strong because he did the 18 miles. But I realised how much we had come on in these months we've been hiking, how much our legs had improved, and how much our lungs had improved. Frankly, I was hardly breaking sweat at the time. So to have finished the way in which I did, I felt it showed really how strong we'd become in these last few months. So that's the end of day number 75. Day 76, Hog Camp Gap, mile 814.8 to VA 56, mile 833.8, a 19-mile day. The night wasn't too bad, actually, and everybody told me it really poured in the night, and frankly I didn't notice that at all, so I must have slept reasonably well. But I woke to rain and drips from the trees, and eventually it sort of stopped or slowed down, or we just had the drips from the trees, and so I cleared my tent inside and got out and into wet clothes. Problem was, I've now sent back all my clothes, apart from the ones I wear every day. So my shirt, which when I'd got to camp, because it wasn't raining the night before, I put my shirt on my tent in some vain attempt for it to dry out. It clearly wasn't going to dry out, and so when I realised it was still there and the rain was coming down again, I just pulled it off the tent and it went on the muddy floor. So that morning, I pulled in my wet, muddy shirt and put it on. Oh my gosh, it was freezing, as you can imagine. But I'd really packed up the tent already, so I was ready to, I'd packed up inside the tent, so all I had to do was to take the tent down. So I had these clothes on. I was wet, but I knew that once I started moving, I'd be fine. And it turned out that way. But then we got a text from Cushy talking about the machete incident, and the outcome was unconfirmed. We didn't know, and frankly, we were shocked. I can say for me, I was definitely shocked. And I got very distracted and I fell. I'm not blaming the fall. It was my fall number 12, but I was distracted. And it was on my mind all the way. And at a shelter, by now there was just Bruce and I. Because the other two had gone ahead. Bruce was struggling. He started out very well again, but he started to struggle a bit. And I think he had in his mind there was actually a bailout point for him to get off, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we got to a shelter, and I said, "Have you heard this news about what's gone on?" And they hadn't heard, so I felt bad telling them about something which I hadn't had confirmed. We didn't know if anybody had died. It was an uncertain time, let's say. When we were at the shelter, Bruce said to me, "I want you to go ahead now." He said, "Look, I know where I'm going to get out." He planned to get off via the Spy Rock Trail and avoid both Spy Rock and the Priest. I thought it was a really good idea. He'd already done great to do what he'd done. So I said, "Okay, I'll do it then." So I went off and I flew. I really, really flew. I'd had some dinner. I tried to shake my head at this news, hoping it wasn't true, hoping it wasn't as bad as Cushy suggested it might be. So I really, really pushed it. And when I got to Spy Rock, I saw the trail where Bruce was going to get off, and I just flew up it. And it's quite a sharp little climb. And then came down to the Priest. The Priest has some memories for me. In 2014, I got a very bad phone call from my son's girlfriend. It was an upsetting story, and it just came back in my mind, and I just wanted to get off the Priest, to be honest with you. And I, once again, flew up it. I'd forgotten it was, there's a lot of steps involved, but I was moving really, really fast. And at the top, I actually caught up with Ugg. So I must have really put on some speed to get there. It was Ugg and I came down, and it was a difficult, really, really long down with plenty of rocks at the top. And frankly, there were quite a few dangerous spots there. I thought I was going to fall a few times, but I made it okay. Cushy turned up soon after we got down. Trigger was already there, and we were waiting for a guy called Indiana J. And Cushy and Trigger had hiked with him previously, so he was going to join our little trail family for a few days. That that day, because we were all soaked, we told Cushy we didn't want to go to Stanimals, which was the original plan, which is a hostel. But we went to Stanimals actually to check out whether I'd had a delivery and cancel and make a booking for the next night. But we went to the Residence Inn, a Marriott, because we just wanted to get really warmed up and comfortable, have our own rooms. And well, we did that. So it seemed a good idea. And in Waynesboro, we found the Green Leaf Cafe. Excellent place to go and eat. I had myself a dirty martini, the first spirit drink I've actually had on the trail. I've had a few beers, obviously, but really not that many. It was kind of strange to be sitting down at a proper restaurant, eating proper food, having proper drinks. But it was, that weekend with Bruce was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was great to have him out there. But as I say, I think it demonstrated more than anything else how much progress we've made as hikers. We all did pretty darn well. And I think we should be proud of the efforts we've made to get as far as we actually have got. So that's the end of day number 76. Day 77. And we were back at the Dripping Rock parking area, mile 849.4. This time we were going NOBO to Rockfish Gap and Waynesboro, mile 863.7. It was a 14.3 miles day. It thus closed the gap that we needed. So all our miles are now consecutive. Because it was going to be a short day, and actually we were expecting it to be sunny as well, we started only at 9:15, which for us is relatively late. But I tell you what, the forecast really let us down. We got soaked. And once again, my shirt just got drenched, so I knew I was going to be at Stanimals that night. So I knew I'd be okay, but because it's not cold, it's just wet. Everything's wet, goes into your underpants, goes into your socks and your feet. It was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. We started well, and I started very well, I thought. The trail was nicely compacted, but there were a huge amount of blowdowns. I must say, it was only when Trigger mentioned it when I was talking about this day earlier on that I looked back and I remember, yes, there were a huge amount of blowdowns. And you had to do a lot of either climbing over them, going around them. But I think the rain and the high winds have really brought down a lot of trees in this last few weeks. So I don't know what the Shenandoah's going to be like now, but we did hear they were quite bad a few weeks ago. So hopefully some of those blowdowns have been resolved. But, you just never know. Sometimes the volunteers can't keep up with all the amount of work they have to do. But they do a fantastic job, I tell you. As I said, I started going really well. And I said to Trigger, is this pace okay for you? He said, yes, it is, but don't slow down. So I thought, well, I'm going okay, or I thought I was going okay. And I realised my little toe on my left foot was really, really slowing me down. It was getting more and more painful. And I guess for the last, 8 or 9 miles, it felt like somebody, every time I put my left foot down, somebody was hitting me with a hammer. And it really, really got me. And I got slower and slower, and I was really thinking to myself, I've got a problem here. I don't know what I can do about it. And I actually got there by 3 p.m. and Cushy turned up just as I arrived, which was so convenient for me, I've got to tell you. But I was staggering a bit by then, and I thought to myself, I've got to do something about this and get my shoes off and find out what's wrong. As it turned out, it was the toenail had turned black and looked like it was about to come off rather. I'm actually looking at it right now, and I've cut it back a bit, and it doesn't hurt as much. I'm now on a 0 day. This is day 78, and I'll talk about that in the next show. But it was a very uncomfortable thing, and we went on the way back. We went to an outfitter's, and I considered getting some different socks, but in the end, I actually didn't get any different socks. But I was also looking for a rain kilt, because this getting soaked thing is getting quite old on me now, and I need to somehow work out the best way I can cope with it. We got to Stanimals, and my umbrella turned out to be there. So I've now got this umbrella for the next time it rains. Hopefully it's going to work well, and I'll report on that when I start using it. Once again, it was left to me to find somewhere to eat, and I found a sports bar, and I cannot remember the name of it. Darn. But it was a really good sports bar, and we went out, our little group, including Indiana J and Dodger Dog and Scout, and so we had a really nice evening. It was a barbecue place, very, very good place. Still can't remember it. So there we are. It was 4 days. We've now got to the Shenandoahs, and we're ready to go. You know how I feel about what's happened. I don't want to mention it anymore. Not that I feel it's not worth thinking about. I think about the poor families and the poor man who passed, and the lady who's been injured. But I'm going to carry on. I hope this weekend at Trail Days they in some way commemorate what has happened, and perhaps when they do the march past, the parade, they stop for a minute halfway through the parade or before the parade and have a minute's silence. That might be appropriate. But we are going on. I am going to carry on with the podcast. I apologise if you think it's bad taste, but frankly, I'm going to carry on with it. I'll get more interviews next week. I apologise also for the lack of stuff I've put in this week. But I'll see you next time.